It is with great pleasure that I reintroduce the new co-host of Good News Thursday, Bradford Ferguson. He's with Rebellionaire.com, which specializes in helping TSLAirs maximize. Boy, I can't talk tonight, Bradford. What's going on? Maximize their lopsided investments in Tesla. Rebellionaire is a brand of Halter Ferguson Financial. Hey, Brad, great to have you on board.
Yeah. Happy to be here and see if we can get something going on Thursday night. Should be fun.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, we're going to talk about the CT handover event, of course, but true to this program, we have this basic idea here. We take a look at the event today in terms of the Tesla stock, the overall economy, markets, et cetera, because that's my theory, is that all of that stuff matters. You can't just look at the fundamentals. You can't just look at the technicals. You got to look at the overall economy, the overall financials, et cetera. So with all that in mind, Bradford, on your first night as a co-host, what were your first impressions about the event today?
Yes, so no pressure, right?
No pressure.
I'm glad they did a little something to show how tough the Cybertruck is. So I enjoyed them showing the baseball, Franz throwing the baseball at it. I thought the truck pull was awesome.
Amazing.
That truck pull is actually really hard. If you ever see it at like a monster truck rally or something, like those trucks, like they'll pull until like they can't pull anymore. Like they literally cannot go anymore. And it looked like the Cybertruck, they just like stopped the Cybertruck.
It couldn't.
I'm guessing they probably could have done loops around it or something. I don't know what the rule is for truck pulls, but it was going strong. And I love the 0 to 60 where it was the Cybertruck was pulling the Porsche and still beat the Porsche on the 0 to 60. I thought that was fantastic and a great show of like how fast and powerful the Cybertruck is. It's a little funny, the start of it. They had a interesting lighting, and it was kind of like a dark and kind of fun lighting. And Elon decided to stand in the bed of the Cybertruck, which the lighting people were not ready for. So he called it audible. So he's like in this dark shaded area for a bit. So it's a bit strange in some ways, but like they showed, I think, what they needed to. They didn't talk price in the actual video, but like people find out about the price later. They also didn't talk about range. So us nerds, we wanted like all of our answers. And we didn't quite get that in the event, which we never do, but we found out a little bit after Tesla updated their website. Big day for Tesla. They've been spending the last few years ramping the Model Y, just being very focused. Tesla, unlike a lot of other car companies, they only have a few models. They have 4 models. Now they have 5.
Yes.
And they don't just like introduce a new model and then, try to sell it unprofitably. They introduce a new model and they scale it to profitability. So they're not like BYD that has 40 models.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, I thought this was a good day, and I'm excited for Cybertruck to come. We'll talk more about that before we're done.
Yeah, so the whole theory on Tesla stock with regard to events like this is that there's a bunch of FOMO going into the date, and then something happens during the presentation that completely blows it up, and then you have this horrible Thursday or Friday after the event, and then it takes 2 weeks to recover. But we didn't have all that much FOMO going into the event except for Tuesday. The stock has been kind of for the last few days, and now it's down today. It was down before the event and went down a little bit more in the after hours, but not much. So
it's back to 235. That's where the stock closed around where it closed on Friday.
Yeah.
So it's
So,
like it's kind of round tripped a little bit. Yeah.
so what does that mean for what does that mean for tomorrow and Monday and Tuesday?
Well, I'm guessing there's people that there may be some people that bought like some short-term calls, like excited about the event or about the stock, or like bought extra stock going into the event, and they'll just sell it because that was going to be their play. They're hoping to sell it on a spike or something like that. So they'll sell their calls, they'll sell some of their shares. So I wouldn't be surprised by a little more weakness on the short term
A little more weakness in the short term.
in the
Now,
stock. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I don't know. I have a very weird setup on how I watch things because like so many of your clients, I'm almost 100% in Tesla, but I have Tesla on my phone. I've got it lined up with all the other Magnificent Seven, and
Uh-huh.
with the Nasdaq and the Dow and the S&P. So that's what I look at. And what I noticed today and yesterday was really that Tesla was following the Magnificent Seven around and the Nasdaq around. They pretty much,
Mhm.
I mean, yes, Tesla's was moving like this all day, where everybody wasn't jumping around quite as much, but in general, pretty much the Magnificent Seven was way off yesterday, way off, and even more so today, as was Tesla. So I'm not sure that the event had much impact at all over these 2 days.
Yeah, it's possible it didn't. The speculators might have carried it a little bit, but um, yeah, I don't think like there was a ton of volume, was there, today?
I'm so unfortunately I don't pay attention. I don't.
I'm a little ignorant, but there has been a shift I think you want to talk about where people are talking up the Dow and the S&P indexes and saying that the Magnificent Seven or the Nasdaq's going to underperform, and I think it's because of just the recent outperformance by the S&P and the Dow, and people are just like seeing that, and they're like FOMOing over to the S&P and the Dow.
But you think it's a FOMO. You don't think there's any rotation
Yeah,
actually taking place.
yeah. There's also it's interesting. I also cover and write about Nvidia, and I saw this very strange like short seller tweet storm over Thanksgiving, and there's this whole culture of people that hate tech stocks. Like they're jealous of the success. Like they're value investors, and they totally miss like all the different tech names over the years, and they just like they just hate the Magnificent Seven or Fang. They hate it, and they want to champion whenever tech stocks don't do well.
I
So I
see.
think like they're hoping that this is the moment like their mode of investing works better. But um, I think a lot of growth investing is actually value investing, where growth investors are a little more imaginative, looking in the future and thinking about where can the earnings grow over time, and where what value investors do is they assume like suddenly the earnings growth shifts down and just reverts to the mean. But growth investors, they see things in their mind, and then they'll do some napkin math and put things in a spreadsheet, kind of like value investors do.
Yeah.
But they're playing on secular trends and technology, whereas value investors, like, they're trying to own companies like Coke and Procter and Gamble, or oil stocks or banks, and like just want it to grow with the economy, which is pretty boring.
That is boring. Well, speaking of growth stocks, I saw an article today that Kathy Wood's having a heck of a month. So she might be back on the cover of Time magazine or whatever it was, wherever she appeared in 2020, I think, when she was the darling of Wall Street. She's been saying, hey, as long as these yields are so high, we don't have a chance with these smaller, more risky growth stocks. But as soon as those yields fall, we'll be back in the money. And all of a sudden, she's up 30% in the last, I don't know, month or something on one of her I forget which one, but one of her stocks, one of her ETFs.
Okay. Well, she's got, I don't know, 6 or 7 of them.
Right.
We got a lot of good economic news. Quite the barnstormer of a GDP report, plus 5% real. So like the nominal GDP growth, that includes inflation. Then you lop that off, and what you're left with is real GDP, and that grew 5% annualized, not in one quarter, but annualized.
Right. Yes.
But that's like very, very strong for the U.S. economy. Like typically, we've grown like 2 to 3% for a long period of time. I believe we're going to start seeing these strong GDP numbers because of AI and productivity increases from AI that allows us to be much more productive per worker. It, greatly fattening corporate profits, and I think we'll see a boom in hiring. Actually, I'm a little out there for a while.
Well, since you've brought that up, you may not know this, but I am the productivity champion. I'm the guy that's what I talk about all the time. And so my theory has been this year that the productivity during COVID and the craziness afterwards, in terms of supply chain shortages and et cetera, and labor shortages, created massive productivity problems itself. So if all you're thinking about all day long as an owner is how do I find another employee because I got to fill that spot or these 100 spots because I got nobody. I don't have anybody that can even do it. I can't even find somebody that's not qualified. There's nobody.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about that ship that's supposed to be coming in, but it's stuck in Taiwan or stuck in China. I can't even get it out of the harbor because there's no container ships or there's no containers. So I'm chasing myself around just trying to do normal business. I don't have time to be thinking about buying automation equipment. I don't have time to be thinking about how to make my product a little less expensive. I'm just trying to get from here to there. Well, all of a sudden in the first quarter of this year, going into the second quarter, all of that went away or mostly went away. Things smoothed out. So I can get rid of a few of those underperforming workers or move them around better. I now don't have to worry about that container. It's going to show up. I can plan my purchasing now, et cetera, et cetera. Productivity spiked. It went from like -3% to like +5.5% or something in one quarter. And that drops to the bottom line for everybody, for the economy as a whole, as well as for the companies. So I see that continuing and getting even stronger. And then you add the GPT on top of it.
Yeah, I'll meet you in the middle. I like when you're not having to deal with all these headaches, and you have all the supply chain headaches where you're having to delay things and just plan your projects differently because you have a different timelines and all that. What you're saying makes a lot of sense too.
And then sorry.
Yeah, then we had prices come down, so the PCE came way down. I think when you looked at the PCE as a whole, it was flat.
Yeah.
And then the core PCE was up 0.2% or 3% year over year. And 3% may end up being the Fed's target that they're happy with. They had been saying 2% inflation for a long time, but they do have some power of the economy, but they have limited powers. They might have to accept 3%. We'll see. But so we're seeing strong economic growth, low inflation, and I think that's going to power tech stocks for a long time to come. So I wouldn't be surprised if the likes of Kathy Wood or Gary Black's fund too. He's a growth investor. That growth stocks as a whole do all right for a while.
Yeah. And we also had the oil coming down very hard today after the OPEC meeting. It turns out, well, yeah, they're going to lop off another 500,000 barrels a day. But that's a drop in the barrel. Anyway, it's not very much compared to the total amount of oil that's produced every day. And that's going to come from these African nations that cheat all the time anyway. So the market seems to have said, we don't believe any of it. And so oil, which had been up about $1, was down 2 by the end of the day. So a turnaround at $3. I'm thinking it stays in the 70s or maybe even drops into the 60s at this point, which would just be more help on the inflation front.
Yeah. So what you're talking about is the cartel that decides, okay, what should our oil production be for the world so we can get a certain clearing price for oil, and they're having to match what Russia's doing. Russia's kind of in OPEC, but then all the oil producers in the U.S., they don't follow along with OPEC.
Are in Argentina, are in Canada, etc. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a massive like game theory game that's going on. It makes sense that was a catalyst for oil to come down, but also like I think people just got overly concerned about the Middle East. I think we tricked ourselves into thinking the Middle East is stable, and then everyone freaked out with the war in Palestine or whatever you want to call it, and thinking that somehow Iran and the U.S. are going to start blowing up each other's ships, but that's not going to happen. So like I think people are just calming down about these scenarios. And I know next year the media is going to start going crazy about the election. You're going to have primaries and all that stuff. They're going to make hay out of that, and cause a lot of drama and try to create some uncertainty. But overall, I see the dark clouds lifting, and I think it's going to be like very favorable moving forward. There's still concerns like on a macroeconomic level about commercial office space or commercial buildings, commercial real estate.
Right.
And I'm guessing the Fed's like still worried about real estate prices and wages. But seeing inflation coming down and having economic growth, like that's what you want.
That's about as good as you can get it. Yeah, exactly right. Well, talking about as good as you can get it, the bond profit taking this morning was crazy. It was so shocking to me. I guess it shouldn't be. Sometimes, some of these systems get out a little bit too far. And so when the PCE news came in this morning, it was so good. Instead of the bond yields dropping, the bond yields went up 6 or 7. I think it was at the high, it went up 7 basis points this morning. But then I noticed in the after hour, or I'm sorry, the pre-market, now that's been cut in half. So smarter heads have prevailed. I think that I'm looking for bonds to potentially the 10-year to drop. Well, it was almost a 3.25 yesterday, which was my target. Gary Black and Larry Goldberg are both thinking it goes to 4.0, but I'll be happy with 3.25. What about you?
Where's it at today?
It was it ended up about, I think right now it's about 4.43, something like that. So getting very close to my 4.3. I'm sorry, 4.3. I should look it up. Go ahead.
You can think about it a couple ways. You could say, well, at minimum, it should be like the rate of inflation. So if inflation is going to be 3, then it should be at least 3. But you could also say, well, maybe the 10-year should kind of be where GDP growth is. So somewhere between 3 and I don't know where GDP growth is going to settle out at. I'd be shocked if it stays at 5 for a long time.
Yeah, no kidding.
It could for a number of quarters. Just
Yeah.
more of the productivity gains you're talking about. So yeah, I think between 3 and 5 makes sense, and I wouldn't see it. I'd be surprised if it dropped below 3.25 again.
Yeah, 3.25 is kind of my goal for next year, for the end of the year. But right now, just 4.25 would make me happy. I think it would be a good place for that Goldilocks economy you're talking about. But some people, there is no technical reason for it to stop at 4.25. It could go all the way back down to 4.0 without any. There's no technical resistance at all.
What do you think about all the AI people saying, well, AI is going to greatly lower prices of everything? It's lowering the price of services, or it's threatening to do that. You don't need as many paralegals to get the briefs ready. You don't need as many artists to prepare prepare a smattering of a portfolio to, approve the one thing that you're going to use. What do you think about that, like causing deflation, and then maybe like the Fed having to lower rates like back to 0 or something, because to try and get like 2% inflation somehow?
Oh no, I'm 100% with you. Now, by the way, we've had this for a very, very long time. Okay, so I've been, in marketing my entire life, and so the ability, for instance, to get a piece of art done less expensively, that's been happening for 20 years. I mean, 30 years.
Yeah.
So you used to have this massive art. I used to have a very large art department with my manufacturing business. And if you wanted to put out a beautiful ad, that ad might cost you, in that time's money, it might cost you $2,000 to $10,000 to do a 1-page print ad, or even a 1/4-page print ad just for art. Well, that hasn't been true for a very long time. You've had plenty of tools to get that done a lot less expensively, plus going offshore. I have 2 full-time people in the Philippines that do my art, both for my channel as well as for, the thumbnails and for my clients and everything else. So those prices have been coming down radically anyway. So this will be a continuation, and there will be people that will not be employed. I can tell you that as a result of it. Anybody that's not using GPT to produce content and art is going to be looking for work, because it's going to be those who know how to use that are going to be the ones that are going to get the jobs and be much more productive. So yeah, the other thing that happens, Bradford, is that we have, you get more out of each person. So sometimes you don't let anybody go, you just get way more content. And so you can put out more content. You can create more stuff than you could before with the same team. So yes, I definitely, oh yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that we will see a continuation of this. Again, I think it'll be 2 things happening simultaneously. The normal productivity changes you get as this economy gets back to normal, and then the additional productivity things that happen as a result of all of this new style automation. And yeah, we could be looking at the Fed going, inflation is back to 0 again. And what are we going to do about that? Because we want it to be 2%. It was only 2.5 years ago. The Fed's going, hey, we got to get it up to 2. How can we get it up to? What are we going to do here? We need it to be. So yeah, that's all in our future.
It's not surprising we're laughing about it, because like it is kind of silly, right?
It is. It is funny what we've gone through. I'm now, I'm old enough and I've been in, running businesses for, almost 60 years. It's not the first time I've been in these kind of messes. The oil shocks, back in the 70s, those oil shocks were almost as bad as this COVID shock in terms of how do you run your business. And there was also a cash shock that hit, during the end of the Carter and the beginning of the Reagan years, where the cash just went away. There was no cash. The retailer had no money, so he couldn't pay the wholesaler. The wholesaler had no money, so he couldn't pay the manufacturer. The manufacturer had no money, so he couldn't pay the raw material suppliers. I mean, there was no cash in the system. People were back to bartering. People were going out. No, I'm in the bicycle business. I was going to bike shops and getting bicycles instead of money.
Wow.
So I could have, and then I try to sell the bicycles to get the cash. Oh no. So there's been these shocks before. This is nothing new, but it is new to I say a generation, at least maybe a generation and a half of people that are under, say, 45 that have never seen. They weren't old enough to go through the 2008, craziness. And so this is really the first time they've seen this kind of whipsaw, that's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're 46 and you're born somewhere around like 76, 77, and like the crazy inflation happened in 82, like the most pronounced part of that. And you're only 5 years old then.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah, you're right about that age of the people who witnessed it or not. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, why don't we take a look at where things are right now, Bradford, and we can talk about what's happening as we go into tomorrow here. Whoops, I'm losing it here. We've got Tesla down 2%, so down about $5 in the after hours, because it's been following the other ones around a little bit. I'm just curious where Nvidia is in the after hours. It is down. It is down also $1.75, but not as much on a percentage basis. And the NASDAQ is, I'm sorry, I got to go into another place here to check this out. But that Tesla being down 2% might partially be, a reflection of the event today. What do you think?
Yeah, Nvidia was down a little more. Meta, or formerly Facebook, down 1.5%. Microsoft was flat. Apple, I'm guessing, didn't participate in the
Apple was actually
move. Yeah, Apple was up. Yeah.
So the NASDAQ futures are down 23 or 0.15%. So not significant move there. The Dow is unchanged in the pre-market. The S&P down a tad, almost unchanged. So that doesn't seem.
I think part of it is like, what do Tesla investors have to look forward to now? So like now you're just waiting for end of year delivery report, and we all know kind of what it's going to be. It's going to be above 1.8 million.
Yes.
We got the point of sale thing starting, but we don't know like how soon that'll cause like prices to firm up for Tesla and margins to stabilize, all that.
Right.
And we're kind of waiting on the Cybertruck to ramp. So people are wondering, okay, when are we going to get excited again as Tesla stock investors? That's what people are thinking on the short term.
Yeah, probably so. Yep.
And people are wondering about what I have been calling a gap year in 2024. I think Tesla may struggle to grow units even by 30%. So that would be like something like 2.35 million. So 30% off of the 1.8 million for this year.
Right.
So I'm wondering where it's going to come from. Allegedly, Giga Texas has a bunch of workers, but they're not producing a whole lot for how many workers they have.
Energy storage.
Energy storage. There we go.
That's where it's going to come from. That's what I keep talking about. I mean, sure, I believe that the Optimus robots will actually be available for sale sometime in 2024, or rent or lease or something. But I believe they'll be actually usable, ready to go, producing them and starting to not only use them internally, but offer them to third parties sometime in 2024. So that could become a very big deal. I don't know if you believe it. I believe it's the number one business. It's a thing that will trump all the rest and make everything else diminish to really small numbers.
To caution the timing though, like I'm with you, but one of the Tesla bot people who's on Twitter, they said they're in different words, they said they're not yet incorporating the type of video training that Tesla is using for the cars now, where with version 12, they just give the computer brain examples of the best human drivers, and they're not fully doing that yet with Tesla bot. So I'm wondering when they'll start doing that, like true end-to-end AI, where they can train it that way. So I'm guessing like they're not quite to the version 12 level yet, and I'm curious like when that will start to happen. That'll be a big change when it does. But in terms I think it's going to improve much faster than most other people think.
Well, but in terms of things that can excite people, if
that's true.
If Tesla wanted to put out a 30-minute video or even a 15-minute video on how Optimus is doing, show it doing some useful tasks, show that they've got more than a dozen of them, maybe a 3 or 4, 5 dozen doing things together or something. Maybe they could do an end zone dance this time. That might be what we want to see them do. So anyway, it looks like at least as far as the pre-market is concerned, we're going into tomorrow with kind of no real evidence of how the market is going to act tomorrow. Everything's pretty flattish. We don't have big news coming tomorrow. A couple of more reports on, I think, purchase managers indexes and whatnot for goods and services, but not a lot hitting that will move the market. Then we get to start waiting for the jobs reports next week. So, which will be the thing that everybody will be, oh no, what will happen when the jobs report comes out? So any last thoughts, Brad? By the way, do you go Bradford or Brad, or as long as we don't call you late for lunch?
Bradford's good.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, overall I'm excited for the Cybertruck. It's I think it's a perfect design as far as the consumer. You can't look at the Cybertruck and say that's for wimps, or that's for or you can't call it feminine either. It looks like an anvil. Anvil is something you strike with a hammer and you use it to forge weapons or whatever with. And it's very striking and polarizing. It's kind of like the Model X Gold Wing doors, where just by itself it's going to get attention. So like I think this is going to drive a lot of interest for a long time to come. The pricing's kind of high on the Cybertruck, so I think they probably got it right, the pricing, but it's like, oh, it feels pretty high. So I think it'll be fine. But yeah, it's people call it a halo product or whatever. Right. People will see this in the streets, and eventually they'll figure out it's a Tesla Cybertruck, and they'll go to the website, and hopefully they check out like the 3 and Y and find out, whoa, the 3 now that with the $7,500 tax credit, it's under $30,000.
Yeah.
The Model Y is under 37, and I thought those were $60,000 cars. So I'm hopeful it's going to cause a shift, and it's going to allow Tesla to actually begin to raise 3 and Y prices again.
That'll be lovely. That'll be lovely. Well, Bradford, thank you for jumping on and becoming my co-host on Thursday nights where we only talk good news. Well, that's not true, but we do call it Good News Thursday, and we call every other night Good News, whatever night that is. So anyway, we'll see what happens in the morning and how the stock.
I missed one. I'm screwing up your outro, but like V12. Like V12 should come out like,
oh, that's true.
Hopefully for early testers, within a month or two, like that should be cool to see where that's at.
Yeah, that V12 I would say would be, I hope it's not 2 months. Hopefully it's a lot sooner than that. But it will certainly create a whole nother set of videos for us to watch and see how it's performing and see if it's 2 steps backward or 1 step backward and 2 steps. Anyway, it will be fun. Yes, you totally messed up my outro, but who cares? It's okay.
I had to give a little good news.
That's right. That's right. All right. So Bradford Ferguson of Rebellionairres, thank you for being on board. And to all of you out there, it's been great talking to you.